In this topic, you will learn about the danger of diethylene glycol and ethylene glycol, how they entered the supply chain of raw materials, and what you could do as a dealer or manufacturer to protect consumers from diethylene glycol and ethylene glycol contamination in complementary health products. At the end of the video, you will be able to understand the risks of diethylene glycol, DEG, and ethylene glycol, EG, contamination in your complementary health products, CHPs. You will also be able to develop risk mitigation measures to minimize DEG and EG contamination in your CHPs, including implementing proper quality control measures, routine testing procedures, and documentation practices.
Congratulations on achieving top sales for the 5th consecutive month.
Thanks. This new multivitamins and minerals syrup that we imported recently has proven to be very popular with our clients, especially parents with young kids. We have received feedback that they love it for its fruity taste.
Yes, my kids love it too. It's a lifesaver for parents with picky kids.
Hi Phoebe, can I talk to you for a minute? It's urgent.
Yes. What's up?
The World Health Organization, WHO, has issued another medical product alert in 2023 on substandard liquid medicines for children, identified in Southeast Asia, contaminated with diethylene glycol and ethylene glycol. Many fatalities were reported and most of them are children.
Henry, isn't your product a children's liquid supplement? Would it be affected?
Charles, can you share more?
Actually, other than the WHO alerts, there have been multiple alerts relating to oral liquid medicines contaminated with DEG or EG reported, resulted in many deaths in children. The first case of DEG-related death was reported in the USA in 1937 on sulfanilamide, where high amount of DEG at 72% volume per volume was used as a solvent. 107 deaths were reported out of the 353 patients who received the product. In the 1990s and early 2000s, more DEG-related deaths were reported, majority of them in children. Propylene glycol was reported to be substituted with DEG in paracetamol syrup in Nigeria and Bangladesh. DEG-contaminated products were also reported in Haiti, India, Panama, and Nigeria, resulting in many fatalities in children. In 2021, a global shortage of propylene glycol has contributed to high levels of DEG and EG detected in excipients in multiple countries such as Gambia, Indonesia, and Uzbekistan. The contaminated products were oral liquid products used for cough, cold and fever, where more than 300 fatalities were reported, majority of them in children. In April 2024, WHO issued an alert regarding falsified drums of Dow's USP or AP-grade propylene glycol, which was found to contain unacceptable levels of EG, ranging from 0.76% to 100%.
It seems that the common causes in these reported cases were due to presence of high levels of DEG and EG. What are DEG and EG?
DEG and EG are synthetic molecules with no natural occurrence. They are used as industrial solvents and can be found in brake fluids and antifreeze agents. DEG and EG should play no role in the manufacturing of oral liquid products. However, they may be present as impurities in the manufacture of excipients such as glycerin, propylene glycol, and sorbitol solution.
How did DEG and EG enter the supply chain?
DEG and EG share several properties with glycerin and propylene glycol, such as being colorless, odorless, and sweet tasting. DEG and EG could enter the supply chain through DEG and EG are cheaper than the widely used excipients, such as glycerin and propylene glycol. As they taste and look similar to glycerin or propylene glycol, manufacturers may mix or substitute these excipients with DEG or EG to minimize cost. Trace levels of DEG and EG may be produced during the manufacturing of excipients, such as sorbitol solution, a commonly used sweetener in oral liquid products. Poor quality control and supply chain management of raw materials could result in contaminated excipients being used. Testing raw materials that might be contaminated with DEG or EG, such as identification testing or impurities testing, was not performed. Poor documentation practice on the chain of custody or distribution history of raw materials would result in a loss of critical information to identify the original manufacturer. Here is a list of actions taken by other jurisdictions to control DEG and EG. WHO issued guidelines for testing of DEG and EG in oral liquid products in the International Pharmacopoeia. US FDA issued warning letters and alerts to manufacturers that fail to adequately test for DEG or EG levels in their excipients. US FDA had also issued a guidance to industry for testing of high-risk drug components for DEG and EG. The European Directorate for the Quality of Medicines and Healthcare revised the European Pharmacopoeia monograph for propylene glycol to include the testing limits for DEG and EG. The Indian and Indonesian regulators had cancelled the manufacturing license of the companies involved in the 2022 incident and convicted some of their employees. Regulators also filed lawsuits against manufacturers, importers, and distributors.
Can you provide more information on US FDA guidance? In the meantime, Henry, could you gather more information on your product?
Let's go over to my desk. I will show you the guidance.
All right, I will work on it right away.
Here is the guidance for industry, issued by the US FDA, on the testing of high-risk drug components for diethylene glycol and ethylene glycol, that is posted on their website. This guidance is intended to alert pharmaceutical manufacturers, compounders, repackers, and suppliers to the potential public health hazard of glycerin and other high-risk excipients contaminated with DEG and EG. It also provides information on compliance with applicable regulatory requirements and recommendations to help pharmaceutical manufacturers, repackers, other suppliers of high-risk excipients, and compounders to prevent the use of glycerin and other high-risk excipients that are contaminated with DEG and EG. The following excipients were classified as high-risk for DEG or EG contamination: diethylene glycol stearates, glycerin, maltitol solution, propylene glycol, sorbitol solution. The United States Pharmacopoeia or National Formulary, USPNF, has specific monographs with identification testing methods for these ingredients. The USPNF monographs also include contaminant limits for DEG and EG. The guidance also provided recommendations to safeguard the quality and safety of medicines from DEG and EG contamination, where the key focus is on supply chain traceability. Manufacturers should maintain knowledge of their supply chain for high-risk excipients, which are the original manufacturer, repackers, or distributors. Testing at all stages within the supply chain should also be performed, along with accurate and complete COAs that identify the original manufacturer. Major pharmacopoeias such as the European Pharmacopoeia, British Pharmacopoeia, Japanese Pharmacopoeia, and United States Pharmacopoeia have specific monographs for excipients that include the limits for DEG and EG. Listed in this table are examples of 3 widely used excipients: glycerin, propylene glycol, and sorbitol solution, with the corresponding pharmacopoeial limits for DEG and EG set at not more than 0.1% of DEG and not more than 0.1% of EG. The WHO International Pharmacopoeia has also set a limit for finished products of liquid preparation for oral use at not more than 0.1% of DEG and not more than 0.1% of EG.
Are there any requirements on the testing of DEG and EG in CHP from HSA?
HSA has updated the guidelines for testing requirements of health supplements and traditional medicines to include the recommended testing for DEG and EG in oral liquid CHPs. The testing requirements for DEG and EG are not more than 1,000 parts per million of diethylene glycol or 0.1% by weight. Not more than 1,000 parts per million of ethylene glycol or 0.1% by weight. Manufacturers and dealers of oral liquid CHPs, which contain starting materials, which are at risk of contamination by DEG or EG, for example, glycerin, propylene glycol, sorbitol solution, should perform routine testing on the starting material or finished product for DEG and EG.
Thanks for the information. Let's go back to Henry for his update on the multivitamins and mineral syrup.
I have just checked the documentations that we compiled previously when assessing the feasibility of importing this product for distribution in our local market. The manufacturer of this product is a well-established company in the health supplemental sector. The manufacturing facility is GMP certified. Raw materials are acquired from reputable sources with complete traceability on their origin, and the COA on these excipients of concern included test results for DEG and EG. The manufacturer also performed identification testing for each of the excipients of concern prior to using them in the manufacturing of their products. We can rest assured that our product is not at risk of being contaminated with DEG or EG.
That's great. Well done to your team for setting such high standard in product qualification during the product selection process.
We hope you have gained more knowledge on the causes and risks of diethylene glycol and ethylene glycol contamination in the raw material supply chain. The DEG and EG contamination incidents can happen to anyone. Manufacturers, importers, wholesalers, and sellers need to work closely to safeguard their consumers' health. Manufacturers, importers, wholesalers, and sellers are responsible in ensuring that their products continue to meet the highest quality and safety standards applicable. You should ensure that there is oversight on the supply chain for high-risk excipients and perform DEG and EG testing in the starting materials or finished products if your products contain high-risk excipients as shared earlier in the video.